Let me tell you about a man who survived poison, bullets, and drowning, all in one night. I know what you're thinking. That sounds impossible. And you're right, it should be impossible. But here's the thing, this actually happened. It's documented, witnessed, testified to under oath. His name was Grigori Rasputin. And before that impossible death, he did something even more unbelievable. He walked into the most powerful palace in Russia, a filthy, uneducated peasant, and somehow became the most influential person in the entire empire. This is part 1 of the Rasputin story. And I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to understand why they called him the Mad Monk. Because this guy, he was either blessed by God, cursed by the devil, or the greatest con artist in history. Maybe all 3. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Middle of nowhere, Siberia. A place so cold and so remote that people there believed in spirits, omens, and magic because honestly, what else was there? Grigori Rasputin is born into a peasant family. And right from the start, people said there was something off about him. His mother claimed that when he was born, there was a strange light in the sky. Neighbors whispered that he could see things other people couldn't. Animals acted weird around him, either terrified or strangely calm. Now, I don't know if any of that is true or if it's just legends that grew after he became famous. But here's what we do know, by the time Rasputin was a teenager, he was already getting a reputation. He'd walk into a room and immediately know things about people. Personal things, secrets. He'd look at you with these intense, piercing eyes and it felt like he could see straight into your soul. People were scared of him. But here's the crazy part, they also came to him for help. See, Rasputin discovered he had a gift. Or at least, people believed he did. He could heal, not like a doctor. He didn't use medicine or surgery. He'd just touch someone, pray over them, stare into their eyes, and somehow, they'd get better. Was it real? Was it psychosomatic? Was it just coincidence and good timing? I don't know, but people swore by it. So word spread. This strange mystic in Siberia with wild hair, dirty clothes, and hypnotic eyes could cure the incurable. And that reputation, it was about to take him all the way to the top. In 1903, Rasputin leaves Siberia. He's around 34 years old, and he decides he's going to St. Petersburg, the capital of the Russian Empire. The center of power. Now, imagine this, you're a noble in the Tsar's court. You've got wealth, education, breeding. You're in the most sophisticated city in Russia. And then this guy shows up. He's wearing a filthy peasant's robe that probably hasn't been washed in months. His hair is long and greasy. His beard is tangled. He smells like a barn. But when he looks at you, when those eyes lock onto yours, you can't look away. That was Rasputin's power. Not magic. Not miracles. Just this overwhelming presence that made people believe he was connected to something beyond this world. And in a society obsessed with mysticism and the occult, which Russia absolutely was at this time, that made him dangerous. Because if people believe you have power, you have power. Rasputin started doing what he did best, healing people. Or at least, appearing to. He'd go to the homes of wealthy nobles, pray over their sick relatives, and miraculously, they'd recover. Or he'd predict things that would come true. Or he'd just say something so profound and strange that people assumed he must be holy. Within a few years, Rasputin had connections. Powerful connections. Nobles, clergy, aristocrats, they all wanted to meet the holy man from Siberia. And then, in 1905, something happened that changed everything. Rasputin was introduced to the royal family. The Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II, and his wife, Tsarina Alexandra. And they had a problem. A big one. Their son, the heir to the Russian throne, was dying. Let me explain what was happening. Alexei Romanov, the Tsarevich, the future Tsar of Russia. He had hemophilia. If you don't know what that is, it's a genetic disorder where your blood doesn't clot properly. A tiny cut, a bruise, even a bump, and you could bleed internally until you die. There's no cure. Even today, it's serious. Back then, it was a death sentence. And Alexei had it bad. The Tsarina, Alexandra, was desperate. She'd tried everything. The best doctors in Europe. Every treatment, every specialist, every prayer. Nothing worked. Her son would have these bleeding episodes, agonizing pain, swelling, the risk of bleeding to death, and there was nothing anyone could do except wait and hope he survived. So when someone told her about this mystic from Siberia who could heal the sick, she was willing to try anything. They brought Rasputin to the palace. Now, here's where it gets wild. The first time Rasputin saw Alexei during one of these bleeding episodes, the doctors had given up. The boy was in unbearable pain, barely conscious. Rasputin walked into the room. He didn't use medicine. He didn't do anything medical. He just looked at the boy, put his hand on him, started praying, speaking in this low, calm voice. And within hours, Alexei's condition improved. The bleeding stopped. The pain went away. The boy recovered. I'm not exaggerating, this is documented. It happened multiple times. Whenever Alexei had a crisis, they'd call Rasputin. And somehow, the boy would get better. Now, let me pause here and say, we still don't know how he did it. Some historians think Rasputin just had a calming presence. He'd tell the Tsarina to stop letting doctors poke and prod the kid, which actually made things worse because it caused more bleeding. Others think it was hypnosis. That Rasputin could genuinely calm Alexei down so much that his body relaxed and the bleeding slowed. Some people think it was pure coincidence, that Alexei was going to recover anyway, and Rasputin just got lucky with timing. And then there are those who believe Rasputin genuinely had some kind of supernatural power. That he could heal through sheer force of will. I don't know which one is true. Maybe you'll decide for yourself. But here's what matters, the Tsarina believed it. Completely. Absolutely. To her, Rasputin was a holy man sent by God to save her son. And from that moment on, Rasputin had the Russian royal family in the palm of his hand. Now, you'd think this would make Rasputin powerful but humble, right? He's in the palace, he's healing the prince, he's got the Tsarina's trust. Nope. Rasputin started acting like he owned the place. He'd show up to the palace drunk. He'd insult nobles to their faces. He'd make inappropriate comments to women, including the Tsarina's own ladies-in-waiting. There were rumors, wild rumors, that Rasputin was having affairs with half the women in St. Petersburg, including, some whispered, the Tsarina herself. Now, I don't think that last one was true. But the fact that people believed it tells you how scandalous Rasputin had become. And here's the wildest part. Rasputin openly preached a philosophy that to get closer to God, you had to sin. Yeah, you read that right. He'd say things like, how can you repent if you haven't sinned? You need to sin greatly so you can be forgiven greatly. So he'd go out, get drunk, party with women, indulge in every vice imaginable, and then claim it was all part of his holy path. The Russian Orthodox Church hated him. The nobles hated him. Even the Tsar was uncomfortable with him. But the Tsarina, she wouldn't hear a word against him. Because in her mind, this man, this filthy, scandalous, impossible man, was the only thing keeping her son alive. And as long as she believed that, Rasputin was untouchable. By 1914, Rasputin wasn't just influencing the royal family. He was influencing Russia. World War I breaks out. The Tsar leaves to lead the army. And guess who's left behind advising the Tsarina on how to run the country? Rasputin. A Siberian peasant with no education, no political experience, no business being anywhere near power, was effectively helping run the Russian Empire. He'd recommend people for government positions. He'd advise on military strategy. He'd tell the Tsarina what policies to support. And the crazy thing, she listened to him. Russia started falling apart. The war was going terribly. People were starving. The economy was collapsing. And everyone blamed Rasputin. Rumors spread that he was a German spy. That he was sabotaging Russia from the inside. That he'd hypnotized the Tsarina and was controlling her like a puppet. None of that was true. But in a collapsing empire, people need someone to blame. And Rasputin, he made it so easy. But here's where things get really eerie. Rasputin started making prophecies. He predicted the fall of the Russian Empire. He predicted that the Tsar's family would be murdered. He even predicted his own death. And he wrote a letter, this is real, this exists, where he said, if I am killed by common assassins, Russia will survive. But if I am killed by nobles, by boyars, then the Tsar and his family will not survive 2 years. The Russian Empire will fall. Chilling, right? So by late 1916, a group of Russian nobles had had enough. Led by a guy named Prince Felix Yusupov, they decided, Rasputin had to die. They couldn't arrest him, the Tsarina would never allow it. They couldn't exile him, he'd just come back. They had to kill him. So they hatched a plan. December 29, 1916. Prince Yusupov invites Rasputin to his palace for dinner. Tells him there's a beautiful woman who wants to meet him. Rasputin, being Rasputin, accepts immediately. He has no idea he's walking into a trap. And what happens that night? It's one of the most insane stories in all of history. Because they tried to kill him. Over and over and over. And he just wouldn't die. But that's part 2. If you want to know how Rasputin survived poison, bullets, and drowning, how his death became as legendary as his life, you need to watch part 2. Because what happens in that palace on December 29, 1916, is so impossible, so documented, and so terrifying that even the people who were there couldn't fully explain it. Hit subscribe. Part 2 drops in 2 days. Because I'm about to tell you how they tried to kill the unkillable man.